A woman is only important if they are producing children, satisfying their male counterparts, or attending to the drudgery of a daily housework. Otherwise, they have no value. This is the life of a woman in Afghanistan. Since the rule of the Taliban, Afghan women have been denied many basic human rights.
The Taliban began its rise to power in 1994 with the support of political instability throughout the state and gained control of the Afghan capital of Kabul in 1996. Under their rule, the Taliban implemented restrictive and oppressive decrees on the female based on their misinterpretation of Islamic texts. Prior to the dominance of the Taliban, women were given rights under the law of the former Afghan government. In the 1920s, they were given the right to vote, and during the 60s, they were made equal with men in the ability to join politics, making up 15% of the Afghan legislative body in 1977, and to obtain jobs stereotypically reserved for men, becoming doctors, lawyers, and government workers. However, with the establishment of the Taliban, women have lost all these rights, being reduced to the confinement of their homes and chained by the cloth of their burqas. Once the Taliban gained control of Afghanistan, women were forced to leave universities, quit their jobs, and move into the reduced social standings and obligations to menial labor, frightened by the acts of oppression and violence that filled their days and nights.
The Taliban lost power in 2001 as a democratic government was established. However, women are still struggling for equality. On March 2, 2012, the Council, Afghanistan's highest Islamic authority, issued an edict endorsed by President Hamid Karzai, declaring women secondary to men.
Men are fundamental and women are secondary. Women should avoid mingling with strange men in various social activities such as education, in bazaars, in offices, and other aspects of life. Women will wear the full Islamic hijab and should respect polygamy. The teasing, harassing, and beating of women is prohibited without a Sharia complaint reason.
This statement easily represents the view of women in Afghanistan. The uniform clothing among women defines their subordination, and their secondary position keeps them from attaining social mobility. Let us now speak with Tamina Faria, a member of the Revolutionary Association of Women in Afghanistan, who helps women in secret schools in their resistance against the Taliban. Ms. Faria, how has the Taliban been able to gain legitimacy in the rule and oppressive acts against women?
When the Taliban began its rise to power, they claimed that their goal was to protect the rights of women, and were able to claim their legitimacy through their connection to Islam. But it isn't Islam that promotes this treatment of women. Islam actually advocates the protection of women and their human rights.
Ms. Faria, how have women coped with life under the rule of the Taliban?
Life in the Taliban is not so different from life before. Women still experience restrictions and atrocities such as rape, forced marriages, and abductions. But they weren't official and totally ignored as they are under the rule of the Taliban. Under the Taliban, women have shown resistance, such as conducting secret home-based classes, which are outlined by the state, through the work of RAWA. Families are also sending the women of their families to different states, such as Pakistan, to free them from this oppression.
As for the women who were removed from their work, did they resist the efforts of the Taliban or flee from oppression?
Many women who could afford to leave the country did, due to the unsafe atmosphere. On the other hand, those who didn't have the male support or the money were forced into beggary and prostitution in order to provide for themselves.
For those women who have fled from the state, RAWA is working with them in refugee camps. When do you think they will be ready to return home?
With the help of RAWA, these women are receiving an education, which is helping them with the resistance of the Taliban. However, the only time I think these women will be able to return to Afghanistan is when a functioning democratic government is implemented. They do not want to return to the hurt and oppression of this land.
What What do you propose would be a solution for change within this government?
A simple solution would be the implementation of a functioning democratic government. It would allow peace in Afghanistan and women to live with human rights. However, it is not that simple. The Taliban has some good supporters that keep it in power, making it difficult to envision a bright outlook on the future of Afghan women.
This work being done by organizations such as RAWA to relieve the oppression against women is one of the many steps of this resistance against the Taliban. But even though this great work is being done, women in Afghanistan still face many struggles. Today, Afghan women face struggles like that of the honor killings and other violent acts. And during 2011, a young girl was sentenced to death due to the possession of a cell phone, and the executioners were to be her brothers. Many women are sentenced to these honor killings by their own families if they are thought to be in contact with the male, even if it's through situations like sexual assault, since it brings dishonor to their families. It's hard to believe, but these acts of oppression are not punishable in Afghan society. With the misinterpretations of Islamic texts, such as the Quran and Sharia, domestic abuse and even murder is appropriate, since it puts women into their place within society. Currently, women's rights activists and groups within the Afghan government are working against this oppression of women, working in order to allow their social presence to be prevalent in the future.